What if I told you that one of the biggest moments in history, the Protestant Reformation, was kickstarted by a tiny anonymous book from way back in the 1300s, a book that most people today have never even heard of? Well, today, we're diving into that exact text. It's called the Theologia Germanica.
And hey, don't just take my word for how important this thing was. Just look at this quote. That's from Martin Luther himself, the guy who changed everything. In 1518, he said he learned more from this little book than from anything else except for the Bible and St. Augustine. I mean, wow, that's not just a good review. That is an absolutely mind-blowing endorsement.
So, okay, that quote really sets the stage for us, doesn't it? We all know Luther as the guy who nailed his theses to the church door, right? But this book, this was kind of like his secret weapon. It was this forgotten gem he stumbled upon that just clicked with all of his own revolutionary ideas. He was so into it that he actually risked his own reputation to get it published. And that really brings us to the central mystery we're unpacking today. What was this book? I mean, what on earth was inside its pages that made the father of the Reformation say, yeah, this is right up there with the Bible? Okay, to find out, we've got to go back in time, and I mean way back. We're going to uncover the secret origins of what some people called this pearl from the 1300s. We need to see where these incredibly powerful ideas even came from in the first place. So who wrote it? That's the first mystery. We have no idea. Seriously, the author is a complete unknown. All we have to go on is a little note in the book's prologue that says they were a priest and part of the Teutonic Order in Frankfurt. So think about that. This wasn't some celebrity scholar. This was someone writing from a place of deep, personal, spiritual experience. And just look at that date, around 1350. Let that sink in for a minute. This book was written nearly 200 years before Martin Luther even found it. It's like a message in a bottle, just floating through 2 centuries of history, waiting to wash up at the perfect moment, right at the dawn of the Reformation. It's incredible. So, what kind of world did a book like this come from? Well, it grew out of this really powerful spiritual movement called German mysticism, and the core idea was pretty radical for the time. It was all about having a direct, personal connection with God, not through layers of church ritual, but through your own inner personal transformation. Okay, let's get into the core message now, because this is where things get really, really radical. You could pretty much boil down the entire philosophy of this book to 3 words. Simple to say, but so hard to do. Goodbye to the I. And this really breaks down the central struggle the book talks about. On one side, you've got what it calls Eigenwille, which is basically self-will or ego. That constant voice of I, me, mine. The book says that is the root of all our problems, the thing that separates us from God. And on the other side, you've God's will. And the way to get there is to realize that all good stuff doesn't come from me, it flows from one divine source. And to make this point crystal clear, the book gives this amazing take on the story of Adam in the garden. It says the problem wasn't eating the apple. No, the real fall happened the moment Adam thought of it as his own. The moment he claimed it for himself, saying, "This is mine," bam, that's when the separation from God happened. That's a complete reframing of that story, right? So here's the main takeaway, the really big idea. The ultimate goal isn't to improve yourself or become a better you. The goal is for your little self, your ego, to become nothing, to just completely get out of the way so that the only thing left is what the book calls the perfect, which is God. It's this radical idea of emptying yourself out completely so that something much bigger can fill you up. I know what you might be thinking. This sounds, well, it sounds incredibly hard, maybe even impossible. So does the book give any practical advice? How does a person actually do this? Is there a path to get there? And the answer is yes. The author doesn't just throw this giant idea at you and walk away. They actually lay out a roadmap. It's a 4-step journey. You start with cleansing and purification. Then you move to liberation. That's getting free from that self-will. And all of that leads to the final destination, enlightenment. And the book is very blunt about this. There are no shortcuts. This quote from chapter 14 says it all. You can't just jump to enlightenment. You have to go through the tough work of cleansing, purifying, and liberating yourself first. Each step builds on the last. You got to do the work. All right, so now that we get the radical message of this book, let's circle back to Martin Luther. How did this specific text, this forgotten mystical guide, end up becoming such a huge deal in history?
I mean, the timeline here is just wild. For almost 200 years, this book is basically collecting dust in a few manuscripts. Then, suddenly, in 1516, Luther gets his hands on it. He's so blown away that he immediately publishes part of it. 2 years later, he publishes the whole thing with his own introduction, and that's it. The book just explodes. It becomes a bestseller all across Europe.
So why did Luther fall in love with it? Well, a few big reasons. For one, he was fed up with the really rigid intellectual theology taught in universities. This book was the exact opposite. It was personal. It was from the heart. Another huge deal? It was written in German, not Latin. That meant regular people could actually read it. And finally, its message of a direct relationship with God, of spiritual renewal, it just perfectly matched the theological breakthroughs he was having. It was the right book at the right time. And really, that's the bottom line. Luther's endorsement was like a rocket booster. He found this nearly 200-year-old voice, strapped his name to it, and sent it flying into the future. It ended up becoming one of the most influential spiritual books for the next 2 centuries, guiding tons of people through a really chaotic and changing world. So we've seen how this incredible little book shaped history. But its central challenge, man, that's timeless. It leaves us with a question that's just as powerful today as it was 700 years ago. It basically looks us right in the eye and asks, in every part of our lives, what happens if we truly stop saying I and mine? What would actually change?